First of all, a good Yom Tov to everybody. It's Yud Tes Kislev today. And although I said it briefly yesterday, the traditional Chabad wish, which is actually at the end of yesterday's Shir Tanya, in the Luach that the Rebbe made, the Friedrich Rebbe made, of the every section of Tanya, you should say daily. So at the end it says, Lashon HaTova, B'limud Achsidus U'V'darkei Achsidus, Tikoseivu V'Seichaseimu. That we should have a good year in the study of Chassidus and in the practices of Chassidus. Maybe we written and engraved for success in those areas. Now, there's much to talk about. It's a little farbrengen, and we have a brief amount of time. So just share a few nekudas. And you've gone to a farbrengen, I'm sure, either Ramat Bet Shemesh or elsewhere, and you might be going to another one. But before I forget, the important thing is to give the bottom line, because sometimes you get into farbrengen and talking, you forget about the bottom line. I just said this in shul here. I'm here at the Chabad shul in Hallandale, so I'll repeat it to you, that it's brought in a sefer called Shailas Utshuvas Min HaShamayim. Responses that were heard in heaven. And this rabbi, I forget his name now, he lived 500 years ago, and he published a sefer. I mean, it's a legitimate book. It's not an abracadabra, fly-by-night, booba baba type of a book. This is 500 years ago. And it's been accepted. And the Rebbe, our Rebbe, he mentioned it many times in especially the Yud Tes Kislev farbrengens. Why? Because he writes over there that today Yud Tes Kislev is Yoim Besura, Yoim Besoira. You've heard the words Besuros Tovos, Besuros Tovos, good news. The word Besura means news. So he says that Yud Tes Kislev, the day Yud Tes Kislev, is a day for good news. And he wrote that way before the Balatanya, the Alter Rebbe, was liberated from his imprisonment today, so many years later. So what we understand, number one, is that today is a day of good news. So what does it mean for us? It means very simple. That whatever you're going to do today, and I know it's 2:45 or 3 o'clock, by you in Eretz Yisrael, but you still have 2 hours or an hour and a half before it's Tzeis HaKechavim. Whatever achlota you make today, in this sefer it says you will see good news. So that means both in your financial and material life, from investments to business, in the spiritual life of ruchnius, of tzedakah and mitzvahs, and then personal, a person needs a bracha for children and health and shidduchim. This is what it says in this sefer. So I just want to get that out of the way, chas v'sholom, not get it out of the way. It's an ikar. That what you invest in today, in all aspects, you will receive good news on that. So, it's rare that there is a day in the Jewish calendar in which a person who lived 500 years ago writes this about a certain day, and happens to be writes it about Yud Tes Kislev. In what context? I don't have the sefer in front of me. I can't tell you, but this is what he writes. So after the shir, each and every one of you think about the different things you need in your life, or you want to do, and go for it. So today, Yud Tes Kislev, for 200 plus years, Chabad Chasidim and many others have been celebrating the release of the Balatanya from the vicious attack and lashon hara and gossip that individuals didn't understand what he was doing and others like him were doing, and they gossiped to the Tsarist government that the Alter Rebbe and his friends were funding the Sultan, the Turks. And this led to his imprisonment. And the Alter Rebbe was in jail 53 days, corresponding, it happens to be, to the 53 chapters of Tanya. In the first section of Tanya, there are 53 chapters. How many days was the Alter Rebbe in jail? 53 days. Not that he wrote the Tanya during those 53 days. He didn't. But it's Ashgocha Pratis, it's divine providence that there's 53 days. But one of the stories that the Alter Rebbe, that the previous Rebbe related is the following, and it's important for us. It's important to us because, as life goes on and we look at our lives and we look at what we did in the past and what we hope to do in the future, sometimes you come to kind of your conclusion that, I didn't do anything really great and I didn't really accomplish and, I wasted away. And that's very, very negative, depressing thoughts. It shouldn't be, it's not something that a person in general and a Jew in particular should feel. But nevertheless, that's reality. So the following story will show you that it's the little issues in life where it counts, not the big issues. The big issues, that's extra. That's extra credit. So what happened is like this. The Alter Rebbe was known as Zalman de Litvak. Shneir Zalman was his name. He was a Litvak. Now, a Litvak 200 years ago was not like a Litvak today. The Litvaks 200 years ago were actually resentful of Anoshim Pshutim, of simple people, simple Jews. If you didn't know how to learn a piece of Gemara and Chumash and Rashi and Halacha, you were a nothing. It would be tantamount to walking across the street, like, you're also a Jew. Things that we're learning now in the Maneh Chochem, guess what? 200 years ago, it wasn't the Satmar, it was the Litvische, and it was basically the common Jew who was involved in learning and davening despised the simpleton. And guess what? Most Jews were simpleton then. If you think that in Vilna, 200 years ago, most were not simple, it's a big mistake. We always talk about Vilna, the Vilna Goyen, and a few of these people. That was the exception to the rule. Most Yidden were working and were struggling to make parnosa and didn't know how to learn much and didn't go to no yeshiva, etc., etc. Who went to yeshiva? The few. Anyway, so Alter Rebbe, our Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya that we look up to and we learn from, he was a Litvak. And I'm sharing you what the Frierdiker Rebbe says in the Sikha. It's not my own made-up drushes. That he had the same mindset as the Litvaks regarding simple Jews. When I learned the Sikha, because I heard all kinds of things, but when I learned it inside, it's like I said, wow, I see it here black and white, This is who the founder of the Lubavitcher movement of Chabad. Anyway. The Alter Rebbe at the age of 16 composed the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He was a Goyen, a genius in Torah. And he came to a crossroads in his life. And the crossroads wasn't about whether he should become a businessman or a sports player or sit in yeshiva and kollel. The crossroads was, should he go to Vilna to extend his learning of Torah by the great Goyen of Vilna? Or should he heard about a Chassidish Rebbe known as the Maggid Reb Dov Ber of Mezrich. Should he go there to find out what it means to daven, to pray? And the Alter Rebbe made a very simple calculation. To learn, he says, I think I know a little how to learn. He knew how to learn very well. So if he'll go to Vilna Avram, he'll get more learning. Okay? But to daven, he said, I don't know how to daven. I don't know how to daven. Because davening it's a whole different avodah. It's not just saying words. It's not just translating words. It's an experience that, is transcendental and meditation and reflection and the heart and the tears and the joy. It's feelings. But feelings of godliness within the context of prayer. So the Alter Rebbe says, if there's a Rebbe, if there's a person that can teach me how to daven properly and how to be motivated to serve Hashem better through prayer, through davening, I'm going to him. And he goes to Mezrich. He comes to Mezrich, and he sees that most of the day the Hasidim there are davening. And he starts asking, what is davening? They tell him. And they tell him a little more. And the Alter Rebbe was a very busy man. He had a schedule of learning Gemara and Halacha and Shalah. He was known as a Shalah Yid. And he comes to the conclusion, as much as I would like to know more about how to daven to Hashem, I'm not willing to give up my learning. Because, when you're sitting and davening for 3-4 hours, you're not able to learn Daf HaYomi those hours. And you're not able to learn Gemara and Halacha. You're davening. It takes some time. I could tell you from personal life over the years, real davening takes a lot of time. It's not just davening with a minyan like we all davened this morning. Very nice. We davened to minyan. We got a big star. But the real daven is to go way beyond, and it can take an hour, 2, 3. It's a whole different experience. If you haven't done it, I suggest you taste it once, and you might actually like it and do it a second time. So the Alter Rebbe said, no, I'm sorry. As much as I'd like to find out how to daven by learning at the feet of the Maggid of Mezrich, I'm going back. I'm going to remain a Litvak, and that's it. Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, Halacha, and everything else. And Yiras Shamayim. They were true Yiras Shamayim. This wasn't that the Litvaks weren't Yiras Shamayim. They were real Yiras Shamayim. And he leaves. As he starts traveling home, again, I don't know if it was outside, and how far. People asked me this yesterday when I said the story. Doesn't say. But as he's starting to travel back to his house, in Lozhne, he remembered that he left his shawl. He came with a shawl. It was a little cold. So he went back for his shawl. That's when he went back, to get his shawl. When he came in to get his shawl, he heard the Maggid discuss a sugya, a section of the Talmud in Chulin, with a very complicated section of kashrus of an animal with someone else. And he listened attentively, and he heard genius. And he said, wow, if this is the Maggid, I'm staying here. So the Rebbe made once or maybe more than once, made a very important point. And that is that what kept the Alter Rebbe and what got him to become a Chasid and become the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, was when he heard the Nigla, when he heard the Gemara, when he heard the Alter Rebbe speak about the Halacha and Chulin and all that. And the Rebbe learned from this story that the way to bring a Litvak and anyone that's hasn't yet had the chus to learn Chassidus, to start learning Chassidus, is through Gemara. Yes, Hillel.
I just want to say, that story strikes me because it was learning a piece of Gemara, a piece of Zohar that brought the Maggid to the Baal Shem Tov.
Okay.
A similar story, yeah.
Okay. So that was one thing that Rebbe said. And in other words, and the practical lesson, it's not so much for us, but maybe our children, grandchildren, or others, these Lubavitcher Bacharim, they like to, they want to go and share Chassidus with not Lubavitcher Bacharim, right? You come into a shul. So the lesson is, begin with Nigla. First they have to respect you to see that you can learn a piece of Gemara, or you can give a drasha on Halach. You know what I'm saying? I recall speaking here in the shul once, years ago, and there were some, obviously not Lubavitchers, I don't know if they were hardcore Litvisha, but and I spoke about an idea that the Rebbe spoke about once, a certain section of the Gemara. And someone came over to me, and he was from Brooklyn, from Flatbush, and he says, I didn't know Lubavitchers know how to learn Gemara. I thought they're ignoramuses. All they know is Tanya Chassidus, and to put tefillin on people, that you know how to learn a piece of Gemara, and you know Halacha, and all that. I didn't know that we were taught that you guys are a bunch of Amaratzim. So that was one Nakuda. But then there's another Kuda that by Mashpir Reb Yoel brought about one Yud Tes Kislev all night. This was on Ocean Park between H and I. Yaini knows very well where it is. It's a big building, Naila Lubavitch Yeshiva, and I learned in that yeshiva. So the Seder was Yud Tes Kislev, and it brings very warm memories back that the last night, Yud Tes Kislev, he would come to Fabren Reb Yoel from 8 to 11 with us. We were about 16, 17, Beis Medrash Bacharim. So he Fabrened with us, with the yeshiva, 8. Then we were told to go to our dormitories or go home, and because tomorrow we had yeshiva. And we were told, some of us didn't do that, and we snuck out, or we kept sitting there, because from 11 till 6, 7 in the morning, he fabrenged all night. And I'm not exaggerating, all night with the older shluchim, the older bacharim, like Rabbi Groner. You had Mendy Groner come to you to speak, and I think in Ramat Bet Shemesh, I remember him at one of those fabrengens, because he was an older bacher in the yeshiva, a shliach. And then guests came from Borough Park and Flatbush and other places. And this was like the fabrengen of the year that Reb Yoel gave it all. and his message was, 2 messages: bittul and dira b'tachtonim. Humility, subservience to Hashem to the point where all there is God, as we've learned many, many times and spoken about, and making a home, dira b'tachtonim. And each Yud Tes Kislev, what I recall is, because I was there for many of them, he would choose either a story or a concept and all night develop it from all sides. Hours. And he would say l'chaim, and at the end of the night, he was very intoxicated, but not wild, but he had fabrenged all night. And it was a scene to be seen. 200-300 people in the Beis Medrash. It was a very special thing. It was very special. So one time, he took this story that I shared with you of the Alter Rebbe returning to Mezrich for his shawl, for his thing. And he said that what we see here is a fascinating thing. That what caused the Alter Rebbe to become a Chasid from being known as Zalmaninu the Litvak, a little dinky shawl, a shawl. He returned from leaving the Maggid and going away and never seeing him again and remaining a Litvak and ultimately becoming the Balatanya because he went to pick up his little shawl, his small insignificant thing. And Reb Yoel was masber that this is the whole idea of a Yid, to take the little unknown and unimpressive parts of our life and make it godliness. To take dafke the shawl and make the shawl godliness and the shawl part of the experience, that's what Chassidus is about. In other words, until the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, the idea was that God is kind of in the big things, in a Blat Gemara, that's big. Steigen. Shas, wow, they're going to stand up when you walk into Beis Medrash. That's big, that's important. But if you know a pasuk in Chumash, and if you know a halacha in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, if you mention the learning of Kitzur Shulchan Aruch to these serious yeshivas and bacharim, they'll laugh at you. You're learning Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, what are you, a baby? You must be a baby. The real boys... The real boys learn the big Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Bruda, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Kaf HaChaim, the Rav Shulchan Aruch. But Kitzur Shulchan Aruch was written by Shlomo Gansfried in Germany at a time where people didn't have a chance to learn, and he wanted everyone to know the bottom line, so he made an abridged version of the Code of Jewish Law. That means it's for second tier, second class. That was the attitude until the Baal Shem Tov, until the Balatanya. The Alter Rebbe came and he says, you want to be a Chasid, you want to see what God is all about, look for the small things. And it's very important this, because if you think about it, it's a revolution within the Torah world. The Baal Shem Tov made a revolution in the Torah world. Until the Baal Shem Tov, as I said, the big things is what's important. The small things is garbage, is nothing. So the Alter Rebbe, the symbolism of the story that he went back to get a shawl is and he ultimately stayed by the Maggid for 3 years, and he became the Balatanya, right? By taking apprenticeship by the Maggid of Mezrich. It's because of the little thing. And if you need support for this, it's from the Torah, the Pachim Ktanim, the small jugs, right? Yaakov returns, because he forgot some small jugs. Small jugs. I told you a story once, repeated, that Lubavitch, a friend, a Talmud Chacham friend, he was a mentor of mine in Los Angeles when I was learning there. So he was invited to a wedding in South Africa. They put him up at a hotel. His name is Rabbi Gershon Schusterman. Very fine Yid, special Yid. Anyway, so he returned. He thanked the host for bringing him. He was very close to him. He taught him Chasidus, and he came back to Los Angeles. And the host still remained there for the Shabbat Brachos. In the middle of Shabbat Brachos, he calls Rabbi Schusterman. And Rabbi Schusterman says, thank you, it was a wonderful simcha. And he says, Rabbi, Rabbi Schusterman calls him. Rabbi Schusterman calls him in South Africa. So he says, you could thank me when I returned. You didn't have to make a long distance call in those days, probably in the 80s. It was expensive. He says, yeah, but I have a very important thing to ask you. I left a pen in my hotel room. Maybe you could see if you can find the pen. So he says, Rabbi, what type of pen was a ballpoint pen or a cross, what do they call a cross pen, an expensive pen? No, he says it was like a 5-cent pen that you buy in $1 a day, whatever, one of these stores, family, a regular pen. He says, Rabbi, you're calling me to South Africa. I should go back to the hotel, see if your pen that's worth 5 cents or less is there, because you left it there. He says, yeah. He says, Rabbi, and these are very serious people, and both very bright. He says, Rabbi, what are you trying to teach me? What are you saying? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So he says, I'll tell you. He says, I was taught in Chassidus that Hashem is in the small things. And that pen has value. And if that pen gets lost, that means it's finished. It's over. Its mission is over. And as long as we could retrieve that pen and it's usable, it's not over. So therefore, it's everything. It's not 5 cents. It's $5 million, because it has a purpose and a mission that still has not been completed. The Rebbe, that's one story. Another story. The Rebbe would write, when people sent him letters and he would make edits on the letters, he would do it with a pencil, not a pen. And he used a pencil, and you could see copies of it. You'll notice it's pencil marks, not pen marks. A pencil starts this way, and as you use the pencil, it becomes like this, and like this, and like this, and like this. It becomes very, very... The Rebbe would actually use the pencil to where he couldn't hold it anymore in his hand. So he had a secretary, Moshe Leib Rothstein, a European Jew, and he couldn't take that. The Rebbe wouldn't, and he would not, and they would put down a bigger pencil, and he would not touch the bigger pencil until he couldn't use any longer that little pencil. So he couldn't take it, so he decided one day to bring in these carnival pencils that you get at Coney Island, or probably at Knott's Berry Farm over there in California, wherever you are, whatever you have in Eretz Yisrael. A big pencil. He came in and he gave it up at the pencil, and he broke out with a big smile. But again, what's the message? Everything by a tzaddik, until it can't be used anymore, its mission is still usable. And this is the message from this story with the Alter Rebbe, that it's in the small things in life where it counts, not in the big things. In the big things, it's very simple. Everyone's looking for fame. Everyone's looking for the grand picture, the grandiose picture. But in the small little things in life, and I think Hillel, in your work as a therapist, I would think you've seen this, and you probably suggested. I know I do in my work, that people need to be explained and trained that when you do a kleine zach, when you do a small thing, you're mamish doing the biggest thing. It's the greatest thing. That little shawl that the Alter Rebbe went back for, because he needed to make of it use still. It was still usable, and if it would be left by the Maggid, it would be forgotten about, and that's it. He went and he brought it back, and he took it back and he made of it use. And that's Chassidus. That's Chassidus. So yes, Chassidus is not fame. Chassidus is not popularity. Today, listen, Baruch Hashem, you have the summer program in Yerushalayim, and it's glitzy, and it's all that. That's because the world we live in, I was speaking to a friend about the world we live in. That's what attracts people. So when you give 4 svarim for 100 shekel, and people bring shopping carts, that's what makes them come through the door. They want svarim, and it's so cheap and inexpensive once a year. But all of this, we need to know, comes from a nekuda, a point of humility and being small. You talk about the Rebbe, you talk about Rabbi Soloveitchik, the Rav, you talk about such people. They were so humble, so simple, yet they were giants, big giants of Torah, of Yerushalayim, and many others. But yet they lived so simply. You went into Rabbi Soloveitchik's room at the Yeshiva University when he would teach. You saw a torn couch. The car that he was driven to the airport could be a jalopy from 1965 or 1970. The Rebbe in his room, he wouldn't have an air conditioner if not from a Jew named Zalman Jaffe, who went into Yechidus after Shavuos 1960, and it happened to be boiling. It was a very hot day, and he went out and he said to the secretaries, here's money and put an air conditioner in. But the Rebbe doesn't want to spend money. He doesn't want we should spend money. I'll fight it out with the Rebbe. You order it. The simplicity, and if you've gone into the Rebbe's room, and you can still see remnants of how simple the room was. Even his house, I remember Leilani when we went by, when the Rebbe Chaim Mushka passed away in 1988, and we went past the Rebbe to console him, to say Amokim Yenachem Eschem. So we went through the living room, and then you went out through the kitchen. So as I'm going out the kitchen, I took a quick look at this kitchen. I thought it would be, a nice fancy kitchen. It was a 1940s kitchen, like it wasn't touched. An old-fashioned refrigerator. You guys know those old-fashioned refrigerators. It was so primitive. That was the Lubavitcher Rebbe's kitchen on President Street in 1988. 88! And it's a lesson. It's a lesson. If we can appreciate more the Dvarim Ktanim, that's Chassidus. That's Chassidus. So, it's something that I find, that sometimes you have to kind of fight against. You have this taiva. Recognition, fame, grandiose, who can get more hits on YouTube? Today the whole world is about popularity. Who's more famous than who? And it's the opposite of Chassidus. Chassidus is the unknown. There were Lubavitcher Chassidim that were Bucky and Shas, and you looked at them and you would think they're schleppers from Schlepperland. And they were Bucky and Shas. I mean, you're talking about great people, but they were so unassuming. And this is what made the Balatanya, the Alter Rebbe. So when we learn Chavre Tanya, today we start again from the beginning of Tanya, it's important to know who the author, who who was the person who put this together. And yeah, we say it's a tzaddik, a tzaddik, a tzaddik. I'm breaking it down for us in a detail that makes sense. This tzaddik was all about the dvarim ktanim. Anyone want to say something? What time is it?
About 3:15.
So, I just wanted to share this important nekuda for Yud Tes Kislev, and it's a Yom Psura. So we have to, those few hours left in Eretz Yisrael, make a cheshbon of what we need and what we're ready to give to Hashem. You want Hashem to give to you, you have to give to Him. Don't be just a taker, be a giver. And we have to go me'al me'ever, over the top, because this is the day. The Rebbe should help that we should each have only b'sayres toivas, good news, begolui, revealed. If it's good news and it's in a treasure, and then we don't, it's hidden. A person is only a human being, and the Rebbe always said, Toiv hanire v'anigla. The Rebbe always said, Mashiach should come, and we should have only good in the revealed and apparent way. Not just it should be in a treasure and hidden. Hila, you want to say something? I see you're unmuted.
No.
Yeah. So I'm going to wish everyone a good Yom Tov. And tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, we'll continue learning Ma'aneh Chacham. And also, again, Chevra, it's an opportunity to encourage other people that like some of you have done, and do more, to join the shir, whether it's live or go on YouTube. I'm telling you, you want to give someone a gift, whether it's my shir or another shir, it's a Chasid shir. Someone who teaches Chassidus and teaches it well, you're giving them a gift for life. I have told you, I'm communicating now with someone from Teaneck, New Jersey, who grew up as a modern Orthodox, whatever, and then he became anti-Chabad because of all the Lashon Haras that he heard over the years in yeshiva and stuff like that. And he started to learn Tanya. He started to learn Tanya Chassidus through his son, because his son went to Lubavitcher camp, and he saw that these people are normal, and he took David Berger's book. He wrote this to me, and he tore it up, and he threw it in the garbage. Okay? David Berger wrote a book against the Chabad, the Mashiachistan, and all that stuff. He told me that he took the book, he tore it up. I have it in writing. And the point is, it's not about tearing up a book. It's about that he sees that Chassidus is so rich. And there's thousands and thousands of Yidden all over the world, all over. I have to tell you, Ramat Bet Shemesh, it's Min HaShamayim that I still haven't gotten to live in Eretz Yisrael. But from the year that I spent there, back and forth, it's a gold mine. People are ready and willing to learn Chassidus. Rabbi Melinowitz over Shalom invited him to give the Shir and Tanya in the shul, and it was 5 to 10 people every week. Not Chabad. We're learning Chassidus. And people kept up with me for years later, emailed. Chassidus was a Chasid say, Chassidus is reich. Reich means rich, wealthy. Chassidus is wealth. Chassidus is fascinating. It illuminates the mind and heart of a Yid, that his whole Avodas Hashem is besimcha. That's another nekuda that we didn't speak about, but the whole idea of going towards things with joy, with freilichkeit, is Chassidus, not, looking at the cup half empty. Always find the cup half full. Just one last thing. Last night, my son-in-law tells me there's Fabrengen in an apartment here in one of the buildings. Maybe you want to go. So I said I had to be in Hollywood for one event. I said, well, I'll come home and I would like to go. It's Yud Tes Kislev, I can't see myself in a bed, Yud Tes Kislev at 9 o'clock, it's Yud Tes Kislev. So I went. These were junge Leute. These were young, married with a baby or two. pretty much Lubavitchers. But some of them didn't look too Lubavitch, okay? Okay? And, I could have gone in there saying, Chaim Dalfin, here, you with your white beard, you're 61 years old. Like, what are you doing here? And, they're smoking hookahs. I didn't even know what a hookah is. They said, is it all right to have this? I said, as long as it's not drugs, it's all right. And these guys poo and poo and poo, and they're vaping. I don't know what's going on. I've never seen this. I'm still primitive. I'm from a different planet, I guess. But it didn't.
Rabbi, no wonder why you're in such a good mood today.
No, but I don't think it's drugs, right? I don't think it's drugs. Anyway, it didn't smell. It didn't smell like marijuana. Anyway, there. And I didn't want to tell him. You talk about COVID. Each one is using. I don't understand. You guys are smoking from the same, vaping from the same thing. It's very bad. But I didn't say anything. And I'm just saying to myself, as I said that I'm sitting here. What am I doing here? It's like it's Yud Tes Kislev, and this is where I am. And that was a fleeting thought. But the host, he had a woolen talus cotton. He had a nice beard, full beard, and he wanted to say the Megillah of Yud Tes Kislev. He had a Hasidic flavor from Brazil. So I started a niggin as they were talking, and I started a niggin, and they joined in. He put on Padav Sholem. If I bring for an hour to two, another older Chasid came in. I don't know how he knew about it. It was 5, 6, 7 guys. It went well. Shared some stuff. I shared the story that I told you before and some other things. And I walked out feeling great. Oh, this was a good experience. And I could have came in there so I could have just ran out. I mean, this is not my Yud Tes Kislev. It's like putting me in a dungeon with rats, in a way. But they're not rats. And it's not a dungeon. It's people, for whatever reason, they might not look exactly like the big Chasid, but they're Lubavitchers, they're Chassidim. And they feel and know that Yud Tes Kislev, you need to come to a Farbrengen, because normally they meet Tuesday nights. They have a shir together, this group. But last night was Monday night. But because of Yud Tes Kislev, the host called them and said, come over, and the Taka came over. And the lesson for me, and I share it with you, is, sometimes you go into a situation which isn't exactly your comfort zone, but as a Yid and as a Chasid, you have to turn it around. You have to do it with sensitivity. Imagine if I go in there and I start lambasting them, I wouldn't get anything. But you sing a niggin, you say l'chaim, you say a story, and I saw, that the heart wants, they're very much. So this is my nakuda. My nakuda is besimcha, with a positive attitude, not with a negative, only with a positive attitude. What? What'd you say?
It's changed a lot. This generation, the way they do things is very different than what we're used to.
Okay.
The hookah.
Yeah. Okay. Listen. Believe me, if I lived here and I had a relationship with them more and more, there would be other change. The main thing is to see the positive and find the good and augment that within the individual. And when you do that, the diamond comes out. That's what the Baal Shem Tov taught. Not to focus on, he can't learn, he can't daven, he's an Amaretz. We don't need you to say that. We do not need you to say that. We know that, okay? Obviously, for some reason, they had a hard teenhood. Whatever, everyone has their issues. And be thankful they're coming to a Farbrengen on Yud Tes Kislev. And they feel that it's Yud Tes Kislev, we need to sit at a Farbrengen and be at a Farbrengen, smoking the hookah and the shmukah and talking and big deal. But they're at the Farbrengen. You understand? That's the point. They're not in a club for those few hours if they go to a club and all that. They're at a Farbrengen. So l'chaim, everyone, let's improve our positive attitude towards everyone and our children and grandchildren as well. This isn't just for others. Our own family and our own wives and our own husbands. we talk about the other. Let's talk about ourselves. Now, it's a day of telling your wife, sharing with your wife a good word, that Yud Tes Kislev, to say L'chaim. My daughter set the table here for my young grandchildren, little children, and they gave them a little grape juice, and we put on a Shabbos tablecloth and lit the candles for 5-10 minutes, and I told them a story and I dramatized it. That's it. It goes into that. It goes into them. They'll be older. They'll remember. Oh, Zaidi came. Zaidi was here. You remember? He told us this funny story about the Alter Rebbe. Wow. We sang Pod of Sholem. One of my granddaughters, Chasid, some Tanya. They know by rote Tanya by heart. This is what you all can do. So do it. L'chaim. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Zay Gezut. Shalom. Bye. Good Yom Tov. Good Yom Tov.